Let's just dive right in with a question that sounds like it's pulled straight from a sci-fi movie, but is actually rooted in some very real and very, very strange science. What if our reality is running on a kind of cosmic game engine? Seriously, think about that for a second. Not as a metaphor, I mean literally. What if the world all around you, the room you're in, the chair you're sitting on, only solidifies, only becomes real the instant you observe it? Let's unpack this wild idea. So, to even start to wrap our heads around this, we're going to borrow a concept from a place where reality actually is built on demand, the world of video games. And that concept is called lazy loading.
If you've ever played one of those gigantic games, like Grand Theft Auto or Skyrim, you're exploring this world that just feels endless. But here's the secret. Your console or your PC, it isn't actually running that entire world all at once. It can't. That would be completely impossible. The whole system would just crash instantly. So instead, developers use this really clever trick called lazy loading. The game engine only bothers to render the little slice of the world that's right in front of you, or maybe just over that next hill. Everything else, all the stuff behind you, the city miles away, it doesn't really exist in full detail until you turn around and look at it.
It's an incredibly smart system, right? It's all about managing limited resources. It saves a ton of processing power, it manages memory, and it lets developers build these vast, seamless worlds without completely melting your hardware. It's efficient, it's optimized, you could even say it's lazy, but in the smartest way possible.
Okay, so here's where we make the leap. What if the universe works on a similar principle, a kind of cosmic efficiency? In a video game, the world is generated on demand to save resources. Well, what if, in our reality, the universe exists as just this sea of pure potential, only snapping into a definite, rendered state when something or someone observes it?
Now, before you write this off as just a fun analogy, this is where we leave the digital world and we step into the truly bizarre reality of quantum physics. Because when you get down to the smallest scales of existence, things get super weird. And it turns out, observation changes everything. And look, this isn't some new age idea. It's a concept that brilliant physicists have wrestled with for a century. The famous physicist John Wheeler put it just like this, suggesting we live in a participatory universe. He was basically saying we're not just passive onlookers, our very act of observing is a creative act.
The most famous proof of this is the double-slit experiment. It's a classic for a reason. So when scientists fire tiny particles like electrons at a screen with two slits in it, but they don't watch them, the particles act like waves. They create this broad interference pattern on the other side. But, and this is the absolute mind-bender, the moment you put a detector there to see which slit they go through, they instantly snap into line and behave like tiny solid bullets. The reality of what they're doing literally changes just because they're being watched.
This crazy phenomenon actually has a name. It's called wave function collapse. Before you look, that particle exists in a cloud of all possible states at once. It's a haze of potential, but the act of measuring it forces it to pick one and become real. It's almost as if the universe is holding its breath, just waiting for an observer to tell it what to be.
Okay, so this is where the big scientific debate really heats up. On one side, you have this baffling quantum evidence, but the mainstream counterargument is a process called decoherence. Now, this theory suggests that you don't need a conscious human to be the observer. Instead, any little interaction with the environment, a single photon of light bouncing off it, an air molecule bumping into it, that counts as an observation and collapses reality. So they argue the world stays rendered all the time, whether we're looking or not.
But what if the whole debate isn't about what is an observer, but what isn't? And this brings us to a really radical twist on the entire idea, the concept of a conscious universe. This idea just flips the whole script. It suggests that maybe consciousness isn't something that arises from the universe. Maybe, just maybe, the universe arises from consciousness. And if that's true, then the whole debate about whether a human needs to be in the room, well, it's irrelevant. Because what if consciousness isn't just limited to brains? What if it's a fundamental property of existence itself? What if every single thing is, on some basic level, an observer? In a model like this, the universe is just this giant web of interconnected observations. A tree is observing the sun, collapsing its wave function into a definite star. And the sun is observing the tree, collapsing its potential into a physical object. A house, a rock, even a single atom contains information. And they're all playing this cosmic game of co-creating reality, constantly rendering each other into existence. But this leads to a pretty fascinating next question. If everything is conscious, is all consciousness the same? The theory suggests, nope, there are levels to this reality-bending power.
Let's go back to our game engine analogy. If consciousness is the operating system for reality, then different things inside that system have different levels of access. You could think of it as different player permissions to alter the game world. This theory basically lays out a hierarchy. At the bottom, you might have something like a pebble. It has a kind of passive consciousness. It just exists, a stable data point. Then you move up to something like a tree with an active biological consciousness. It's processing energy, it's responding to its environment. And then you get to the high level, humans, with creative consciousness. We don't just observe, we actively manipulate and recode our environment.
And what's really fascinating is that this hierarchy applies to us too. A person just operating on autopilot, just reacting to life, they're just playing by the game's default physics. But someone with high awareness, with true consciousness, they're like a power user. They understand the underlying rules of the system so well that they can begin to intentionally influence outcomes, to literally co-create their reality instead of just passively experiencing it. Which brings all of these ideas, the lazy loading, the quantum physics, the universal consciousness, to one final, very personal point. If reality isn't a static stage, but a dynamic, participatory game that we are all actively creating every single moment, then the only question left to ask is, what kind of player are you? An NPC, just running your programming, or a power user, consciously rendering the reality you want to experience?